Alrighty, I got it. Okay. Tonight on the Power Scripting Podcast, we are pleased to have with us Karsten Bott. Karsten, welcome to the show.
Hello and good morning to everybody.
And I will, again, thank you profusely for coming on. It's super early in the morning for you there in Germany. So thank you in advance, and hopefully we can keep you awake for the next little while. What I wanted to talk to you about, Karsten, I know you've done lots of cool things, and this actually came as a request from one of our listeners. I don't recall who it was, but you were specifically called out, and I started looking at what you have been doing with PowerShell. Thought it was definitely worth our time to talk about it. So why don't we get started? Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of how you got into IT, and then we'll kind of work our way forwards.
Yeah, okay. So I started in IT like 25 years ago. I think that was the time people were thinking about PCs and stuff. So as of today, I would call me an old guy in IT. I don't know why, but right now I'm feeling pretty old. And my first interaction with Microsoft was the OS2 LAN manager stuff ways ago. This is the first time I was really working with a pre-Windows stuff. This was all LAN manager stuff, and ever since I'm working with Microsoft technologies. And yeah, per accident or not, I bumped into Jeff Snoover on one of those TechEds, and this was the time I started with PowerShell.
Awesome. Yeah, you've been at it for a long time then. So let's see. So have you been at EMC for 25 years? Surely not. Tell us a little bit of the progression there that brought you to EMC.
That was a funny thing. I started my IT career at a German computer manufacturer. It was called Nixdorf at this time. They were making some nice mid-range systems, and at this time I had my first touch with so-called hard drives. Those were those big magnet spindles you had to plug into systems with 10 megs in size or smaller. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. This company then was acquired by Siemens, another huge German company you may know. And I've been there for like 10 to 12 years. Actually in the PC manufacturing area, so I was responsible for server systems, part of let's say field engineer, and we were just trying to sell Windows PCs. And the first time I got in touch with EMC actually was when SAP started to bring their systems to Windows on x86 on the first Pentium CPUs. So this was my first time really when I tried to start moving Windows and Windows.
Uh-oh.
Did we lose him?
I think we did.
When he comes back, I want to get him to put his face back on there. Can instead of the shared screen?
I don't think SAP has changed their user interface since those days.
So Skype tried to connect.
And you're back.
So you missed, Karsten, you missed Jonathan's comeback. Why don't you repeat that one?
Oh, I said I don't think SAP has changed their user interface since those days.
Exactly. I guess the only time they changed their interface was when they moved from R2 to R3. And I think they call it still R3 now. I guess right now it's all about SAP HANA. But yeah, you're pretty right with this. So this was my first touch also with EMC, and at this time I was still working with Siemens, and we were trying to OEM a storage system from a company which were called Data General, and we OEM'd this within Fujitsu Siemens. And at this time, I thought, okay, I have to look for a new job, and I moved to EMC, and it was the same time they acquired Data General. And since ever then, it was like 12 years ago, or 13 years ago, I'm part of the EMC family, and I tried to get away from this PC stuff and from that Windows stuff. But once they recognized I know about all that Windows stuff and this Exchange messaging and what all is about, they moved me into a group responsible for Windows or Microsoft technology. So I'm still in the Microsoft game now since 20 years and longer. I don't know.
Wow. So yeah, you've been at EMC quite a long time. I didn't realize that. So what has the company changed substantially since you've been there? What have been some of the big movements and changes in the storage business?
Definitely, the company changed dramatically. So when I joined EMC, they had only one large storage system that was called Symmetrix. So everything you wanted to do was with Symmetrix, and Symmetrix. And that was long way before they introduced VMAX. They tried to get into the mid-range storage space by acquiring Data General, which was a smart move. And what they didn't do at this time was keeping the server business of Data General up. So they just were taking care for their storage business in the mid-range space with those Clarion arrays. From ever since, EMC changed from a company having one or two products to one of the largest IT companies. They especially when they acquired VMware, this was a whole game changer, not only for EMC, but I think also for the virtualization industry. So this was one of the milestones they did. The other thing, we are trying to be leader in everything we do. Like 2 days ago, we had our mega launch where we announced our new Flash products. We have our Extreme IO in the market right now since beginning of this year, and this is the most successful storage product in the industry and within EMC ever since. So when you look at our portfolio, it's not only storage, it's also software, it's security, the acquisition of RSA. Nobody ever thought why we acquire RSA, but when you put all those pieces together, cloud and security and all that stuff, that definitely makes sense. And we turned away from just selling a dinosaur disk arrays to a cloud company that sells cloud infrastructure. And the latest acquisition we did was Twinstrata, which are doing cloud gateways for bringing block storage to the cloud and connecting cloud storage as block storage services. So there's a lot of movement within EMC, and I love to be part of this family because it's never getting boring. Whenever you want to change, and you want to change within your career, you can do this with within EMC. Unless you're working with Microsoft technologies, then you have to stick with Microsoft. No, just kidding.
So do you end up applying multiple different EMC products to Microsoft solutions, or is there just a set of one or two product lines that you work with?
To be honest, it's a complete stack. And that's, I don't know, because of my history, because as I mentioned, I was part of Siemens years ago. And at Siemens, we OEM'd a product called Networker from Legato. Guess what? EMC acquired that company. And once they recognized I have a Legato certification, they asked me why not doing something in the backup space. I said, okay, I don't want to be part of this backup family, but I can help you there. So I'm doing a lot of stuff with backup and Legato Networker, or Networker, how's it called right now. I do a lot of stuff with disk arrays. I do a lot of stuff with block, with file, with scale-out NAS, literally with everything. We have also management software for storage management and server management. I'm covering that as well. But every time I'm touching those products, they have to be integrated somehow with Microsoft. And the more better, they are running with PowerShell.
So I saw when you sent across the speaker bio, you wrote on there, does it have PowerShell? Why don't you kind of tell us the thinking that went into that? I mean, I understand it, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, and this is what I said ways back when I met when I met the PowerShell group in the PowerShell dinner in Amsterdam at TechEd Europe, I think 4 years ago. We were discussing standards of management and all that stuff. And whenever I'm looking how people are scripting and trying to get stuff out of it and try to something that we call screen scraping. And this is very common even in storage industries. People try to get a result or a list of entities of an array, then they try to read the screen with scrap and all those silly commands.
Oh, Lord.
This is a point for me where I say, why don't you think about getting objects back and working with PowerShell and make stuff more easy? And if we maybe go later through a small workflow, a simple task in the storage industry is creating a LAN, map that LAN out to a host, give it to a Windows host. Now imagine giving 20 LANs to a Windows host, telling the Windows storage administrator, you have right now 20 Windows LANs. The first question back from him is, which ones are the fast ones? Which ones are the ones sitting on the slow drives? Which ones are the drives meant to be for my database? They don't know because for them, those are only hard drives. And with PowerShell, passing those objects to the next command, it's pretty easy to identify the drive that you just provisioned to the guy as the drive that's the fast one or as the drive that's the slow one without formatting the wrong drive.
So does that mean that the workflow for driving the storage provisioning, where must that happen in order to see both sides and affect the changes like you're talking about? Because what you just described can't happen solely from a storage administrator without OS level permissions, for example.
Yeah, and this is the good thing, and even if we talk about this cloud thing, we are breaking silos, and we have to break silos. Whenever I talk to a storage admin, they don't want to give control to Windows admins, and vice versa. So sometimes people are doing both, or also they're responsible for network, but most of the time in traditional IT, those are silos, where we say, okay, I provision a LAN and I map it to the host, but I don't touch the server, and vice versa, where the server admin says, no way the storage admin's going to touch my system. So what we do, if we are working with Windows user permissions.
Hey,
so,
Karsten, I'm sorry. Hold that thought. The audio has degraded a little bit. Jonathan needs to call you right back, okay?
Yeah, I'll call you right back.
Better now?
No.
No, it is not.
Let me try.
What happened?
I'm going to stop recording for a second. Hold on just a second. Okay, let's see if that's any better.
What about myself?
Yeah,
my
so
words?
far it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Karsten, you still there?
I'm still here, yes.
Okay, yeah, I think we're fine again.
So, yeah, back to the.
So you were talking about breaking silos.
Yeah, we are talking about breaking silos and who does what, and this is something we constantly face right now, even when we talk about cloud or converged systems that we try to sell, like block systems that have virtualization, storage, and everything in it. So we have those silos. But what we can do is, even for storage administration, the only thing we need to have is a Windows box. On that Windows box, we install our storage integrator. From there, an admin can configure storage and map it to Windows host. On the other hand, a Windows admin can take those LANs and he can take those LAN objects and work with those LAN objects. So rather than me creating the storage, present it to the host, formatted and all that stuff, I can just create the storage, and the storage the Windows admin picks up the task like in a workflow on the other side and continues the stuff. Because he gets a number of elements from me, and I tell him, look, those are your elements, work with them, be happy. And the other thing I could do, I could allow the Windows admin to give him access to certain storage resources. Like he is allowed to configure storage in certain pools with a certain capability, or I can go a little bit further, and that's something that we do with virtualization of storage management. I can give him a virtual array where he has the rights to do whatever he wants with that array, which is only a virtual part of the array where I tell him, okay, he gets like 200 gigs and that many IOPS and that many number of front-end ports, and off you go.
So the virtual array, tell me which EMC... Oh, my audio is sounding really bad, Jonathan.
It's echoing back from Karsten. Can you mute Karsten, please?
Oh, sorry, I forgot.
So, Karsten, when you were talking about the virtual array, I was interested in understanding what EMC product or products is presenting that array, and are these features specific to, just a subset of the enterprise storage products, or is it pretty broad across the different, VNX and VMAX and Isilon and all the rest?
Yeah, that's a good question. We started with, and this was a year back ago, we announced a product called Viper. That's the Viper. And Viper is our idea of a software-defined data center. It comes with a data pane and a control pane. Within that system, you just define virtual arrays from in your control pane that sit in your data pane. Those virtual arrays are part of physical arrays, and they can be part of stuff like commodity hardware like JBots, and they could be, for instance, object stores. And with Viper, you can map virtual arrays or just services to the outside in terms of a service catalog. The interface you are talking to at the end of the day is a web interface or a REST service, or later on it will be PowerShell to allow the administrators to just execute a request from a service catalog. And it's not only for EMC arrays, it can also hold any vendor array, and the good thing, what we announced with 2.0, it also can have commodity drives, sometimes referred as JBot, that sit on top of our software storage that we call Scale.io.
Okay, yeah, and I've done some work with Scale.io through some projects at my office, working with what was his name, Jonas Rosland, and we did some stuff with Scale.io that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and people underestimate it, and we did a test with Scale.io where we put out like 4 million IOPS out of Scale.io, where we said, oh, this is awesome. And when people think about EMC and
4 million
storage companies,
IOPS?
4 million IOPS driving out of Scale.io clusters, virtually sitting somewhere, don't care where they are. It's just a large storage system, let's call it storage grid or something like a storage grid. And this is pretty awesome.
And you said the Scale.io uses commodity drives, right?
Well, you can use your own commodity drives, but what we do in our Viper ECS offering that's just announced in the version 2.0 2 days ago is that we standardize our commodity hardware, which means whenever you do software-defined storage, you are good if your software knows about the underlying technology. Because when it comes to scale, and you have to scale to hundreds and thousands of drives, you need to know which are the failing components from a single management interface. You don't want to dig out to each and every node and ask the node, is everything fine? Are my drives okay? Which drive do I need to change? Because it's JBot. That needs to be centralized, managed, and monitored, and you need to know where are failovers going on or where the redundancy is, let's say, kind of degraded. It's not a traditional RAID anymore. It's working different then.
So was there a period of time that you noticed where Scale.io and some of these more software-based solutions, was it difficult of a transition? And did you, because the hardware behind them is not necessarily big iron, big EMC storage arrays that might cost millions of dollars?
Yeah, I guess the transition time is coming. It's not primarily right now. When I think of it, most people looking into it might be they are large-scale cloud environments where they look at large object services or also at large block services. If you look at traditional IT with 5 nines and all those special cluster objects they use traditional big iron, I guess.
You're talking about the difference between a service provider and enterprise IT.
Service provider, enterprise IT, and also small shops, yeah.
So you've tossed a word around that I think we should probably define on the podcast, because I don't think it's come up before. Why don't you tell us what object storage is and what EMC does there?
Okay. I try to do it in a short way. So in traditional IT, we normally store it on block devices where we put file systems on, and we had those file systems that we had to where we put all our files and stuff on, and where we put our database on, and we had to take care that those file systems are redundant and all that stuff. In an object way, you are just accessing a large object via a, let's say, internet protocol with REST or SOAP, and that's the way how you connect to that object. You can give these objects special attributes, like they have to be redundant, they have to be in multiple places, like they can outdate and all that stuff. This is stuff that you can give those objects, and rather than addressing a file system, your application can directly talk to an object rather than storing on traditional file systems taken care for
yeah. So like give me retrieve this GUID or this user ID or this whatever this image.
Exactly, and that's just the same like Azure does for blob storage. So this is just an object store, and modern applications or what we call web applications are using that object store, and there's a change in applications. I guess there will be a change in applications because people are. It's gonna be awful to manage all those old type of applications. So they have to change the ways they work. And if you look at cloud scale or web applications, they have stuff like failover capabilities sitting in them. You don't need to worry if your data is stored once or twice. It's just there. Whenever you want to access something in the internet, it's there. It's coming from the cloud, and you don't worry where it's stored.
So have you ever thought of how object storage might be applicable to scripters and to PowerShell?
We as EMC or in general?
Either one.
I was very interested in when Microsoft released SMB access to their object store. And this is something they released at TechEd, where people just can work with an object store like in a file system, like in an SMB file system. However, to scripters, they just could talk REST, but I wonder what kind of objects or how they might store there. So I don't know if this is the traditional application, but I haven't thought.
Yeah, I'm looking at just Googling while we're talking, and I see that Azure has a set of PowerShell commandlets to manipulate blob storage objects, and it looks like you can copy things up and down. And I'm just curious if EMC is doing similar things with their object storage.
Yeah, definitely, but it's not PowerShell right now. It's all via REST interfaces and REST APIs. Like our APIs are comparable or compatible with the Amazon APIs, so that's something that you need to do with an object store. Just you need to be comparable or interchangeable with others.
Yeah, it's funny how Amazon. I mean, this is not a new story, but I mean, Amazon. They sell books, and then they sell everything, and then they sell computing services, and now they're the largest cloud provider by far. And there's plenty of other service providers and cloud platforms of various kinds, but there's a huge gap, and now what you just said kind of is an example of that, where they basically became a de facto standard for an API, because EMC and other companies are making products that are API compatible with Amazon S3.
Yeah, and that exactly is the reason why we acquired Transtrata, to be staying in those technologies every time, because with Transtrata we can make this transition from block to Amazon to cloud storage, whatever it is. So that definitely makes sense at the end of the day. It's not moving your stuff up from your data center to the cloud. It's about connecting those terms.
So, what have you seen Flash do to the space, to storage and to EMC? Yeah.
He just dropped.
Oh, we were still on, but not when he asked, because he couldn't hear us. Gotcha.
He may be back. Nope.
Back on?
Now I think he's back.
Yes.
I'm not sure why Skype is dropping constantly. So normally I have a pretty good internet connection with 100 megabits. And normally it doesn't disconnect.
It's Jonathan's fault.
That's typically the case. Might as well blame
So,
me.
Karsten, I did want to ask you about flash storage and what you've seen that do to the market. And there's a bunch of there's a bunch of startups in the space, and EMC's obviously got a couple products in there, and there's flash everywhere now. It's just kind of interesting. Where do you see that going?
For me, flash will be definitely the future of storage over the next couple of years. So those rotating drives, those spinning rusty drives, they will become obsolete in a good amount of time. Right now we are going to, let's say, terabyte SATA drive, flash drives and more. The problem most of the time is the durance. How long can you run those drives on workloads that constantly write to it, and how can you work with those drives effectively? So when we looked at the flash industry, there are a good amount of competitors and startups right now, and we acquired Extreme.io for flash. We built flash into our traditional storage systems to allow people for mixed workloads. Which we call normally general purpose arrays. So we can put into VMAX, we can put flash into it, but we also can run normal fiber or NL-SAS or SAS drives into those arrays. But then our Extreme.io bricks, they are only built to do flash. They do stuff like inline deduplication. So before they write a pattern to the flash, they deduplicate everything in memory. We can encrypt in memory, so that at the end of the day, we don't need to have housekeeping tasks, because whenever you want to erase a cell in flash, you have to do some housekeeping stuff. And that makes a flash array become unresponsive when it's getting filled above 80% and all that stuff. And we try to absorb this with our technology, and we give a guarantee. Actually, we put, I think, $1 million guarantee. If you suffer of IOs, if our array stops to respond when it gets filled with 80% and you're throwing, let's say, 250,000 IOPS on it, which a brick is allowed for. So What we try to allow the people is adding more and more bricks and just adding more I/O capacity to the system. And the funny thing is, with our flash arrays, you can take an SQL or an Oracle database, which is big, and you just make a snap inline. You snap the whole database with just a mouse click, and you get the same IOPS of that copied database than you get from the production database without interfering the production. And this is a complete game changer for us, because on traditional arrays, that was simply not possible.
That sounds like magic to me, in fact.
It's extremely magic, and it's all about the code that we have in those systems, because we are able to do stuff inline and not post-processed. Because most of technology, when you look at trimming, deduplication, and let's say also the Windows operating system, it is done post to storing the I/O. So you first store the I/O and then you try to optimize it. And we optimize it inline before we store it. And that makes the whole thing damn fast.
Okay, gotcha. So that is pretty cool. And I've heard this before about spinning media going away. And I think it's the features that you're talking about are coming now to multiple products, so that people will think of them less as for a while there, around the beginning of Flash availability, it was you had to be careful. There was a lot of uncertainty, and it felt like this is really fast. I love it. Thinking about putting it in your PC, but there are horror stories every once in a while. So I'm kind of wondering what. Okay. Are you able to explain why there's such a thing as an all-flash array? Why is that a big deal? Why can't you just, for example, take an SSD and put it into your existing enterprise array and be done with it?
Okay, the first thing is the back end. So how you put those drives together needs to be able to drive that amount of IOPS through the back end. So whenever you have let's say a drive does like 5,000 IOPS, take a symmetric system with 3,000 drives, multiply it with 5,000 IOPS, and imagine how big the back end, the pipe must be to guarantee that all the IOs go through the system. Then there is the notion of controllers. You normally have in a standard array or in a mid-range array, you have a dual controller-based system. Most of them nowadays have Intel CPUs sitting on it and talking to each side of the array and making sure you get your IOPS through all the PCIe lines. But there's a physical end of it. And you need to optimize this to get all those IOs from the front end that your applications are driving to the back end. And if you look at today's servers, if you get a 128 core server and attach it to an array, this thing has mostly more IOPS and more CPU power than a traditional storage array. So that doesn't make sense. So you must be able to build an array that has low latency when it talks inside to its components, and it always has a fast path to those drives. That's the first thing. And the second thing is you need to work different with the IOs that you bring to the disk compared to a standard array. In a standard array, you were writing to the cache, waiting for the spinning drives to become available, and then bring the IOs down to the drives. And whenever there was a read request, you try to serve that read request. And there was queuing, and you need to make sure what's more important, the read or the write. How long is the data allowed to stay in cache before you dump it down? This completely doesn't apply to an all-flash array. In an all-flash array, you just write it to the array and you are done. As I said, in our system, there's some intelligence that does the inline deduplication and optimization before we write that down, but this goes just inline in the array itself. But the traditional disk handling, it's just gone.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. I appreciated that. I don't know if you learned anything, Jonathan.
So for myself, introduction of Flash, and that's the other thing. It's just the pricing. I'm working a lot with virtual machines, with VMware virtual machines on my desktop for demoing system, and maybe you stumbled across something I call Lab Builder or Networker to Go. This is something I do for my pre-sales folks. I build them pre-built environment, and they are completely built with PowerShell. And the idea is not to build high sophisticated PowerShell environments. It's just to give them one command or one command line telling them, build me an Exchange system with 2-node database availability group, build a networker server, and build a, I don't know, whatever it is, and start it on my system. And for this, I'm using stuff called linked clones in VMware. If you want to do this with a spinning drive, with a rotating media, it will take you a good amount of time to fire all those virtual machines up. And when it comes to the 5th virtual machine, your performance just drops down. There's nothing going on. If you do this on Flash, you're pretty fast. It's just working. You say, make a copy of this machine, make a linked clone, fire it up, and off you go. And that's what I'm doing all the time with those environments. Now, Flash was expensive like 2 years ago. And exactly for those projects, I bought some SSDs. I have PCIe flash card, and I have a 500 gig Samsung SSD. The 500 gig Samsung SSD, which is a consumer drive. It's not an eMLC or something highly sophisticated. It was just at $200. $200 for
come
500
down
gig
a lot.
flash drive. It's like nothing, and it works. And if it's no longer working, I'm just replacing it with a new one.
Yeah.
And you know when those things get old, because the software is able to manage it and tells you how many cells are drained or dead right now.
So let's talk a little more about what you do and what you've done with PowerShell. So I guess with regards to that project that you just mentioned, sounds like there's going to be kicking off some installers. There's going to be some VMware automation in there, and that's obviously just for the EMC field guys. What have you been doing? I mean, I see that you had a talk at TechEd last year. What have you been doing out in the community with PowerShell? Did we lose him, Jonathan? Did we lose you or me, Jonathan?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay.
I was, but Jonathan left for a minute, so I was like, Jonathan, Garston.
Okay. No, I forgot to hit the microphone button to unmute. Oh,
okay. that was just that because problem. I know that problem very well.
Yeah. That's the problem of those telcos every time. So I don't know if people can see my screen later on, because I can't see the live screen because of rights management in Germany. So I'm not able to see the YouTube stuff. Can you? Oh yeah. So whenever you stuff like live streaming in Germany, I think there's something called GEMA, where you have to pay some money because you're broadcasting media. I guess that's something like this.
Wow, that's really weird. I'm gonna go research that now, because I see I'm looking up GEMA and YouTube, and I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah,
and that's weird, because this is our own content. This has nothing to do with anybody else's rights or content. This is mine, and Jonathan's and you, and there shouldn't be anybody else involved there. That's a shame.
Yeah, you know what? One of my hobbies is skiing. Besides some other fancy sports that I'm doing, and it's like off-piste skiing, so backcountry and And sometimes we are taking videos of where we are going down between the glaciers and all that stuff. And I made a video last winter in Engelberg in Switzerland and put some music behind it. And it was some rock music, but from a cover band. And the stuff that reads the codecs at YouTube thought this was an original song of I don't know whatever and removed the content from YouTube.
Yeah, I've heard of that happening, but I didn't understand how it had any impact on a live stream like this one.
Yeah, that's Germany, I guess. So.
Oh, well. Yeah, I see here 12 euro cents per streamed video. But that sounds like it's related to, where you have musician, or artist rights, and this live stream doesn't have. That's not applicable here. Oh well, nothing we can do about that right now.
Exactly. So the only thing I could offer you for if we do it again, someone is that we do something like a WebEx. Yeah. Which is free but you then have to use your client for it. But that's not a problem at all right now.
Gotcha. Yeah, we actually just switched to YouTube. This is the third week that we've been using YouTube as a stream provider. Anyway, so let's go back to let's see, what was I asking you about? Oh, what have you been doing with PowerShell in the community?
So yeah, what are we doing with PowerShell in the community? And I'm not sure right now if people can see the screen that I have. Are they able to see it?
Not really well. It's just a 25% size of the screen. So
okay.
I don't know, Jonathan, if you want to tweak that, but
it doesn't really work.
People, yeah, we give people links in the show notes for following up later.
So I'm trying to explain it. It completely goes into the direction that we mentioned early on with all those silos, and trying to give application administrators an understanding of storage and vice versa. So what we simply do with our EMC storage integrator, and as you mentioned before, EMC has a whole bunch of arrays. We don't want the standard user to become an expert in all different kinds of arrays that we have. So we have a common sense and a common use set of those arrays, and the very lowest sense is they provide LUNs. And what we streamlined is the provisioning of LUNs. So it's just like, and the good thing is for our PowerShell commands, we have an extraordinary help because we filled every online help in PowerShell with examples and all that stuff. So whenever you do a get help minus example, it gives you examples and explains you how to use the command. And this is the most good thing about our PowerShell stuff. It has all the help filled in, which is great.
Yeah.
So what we essentially do is the process I described from creating a LUN, which is just new EMC LUN. That creates a new LUN, and then we just map that LUN to a host. We streamlined this, and I made some use cases around it. So normally, a customer is not asking for a new LUN. The typical question is the Exchange admin wakes up at 5 o'clock in the morning because his data store is filled up. And he tells the storage admin, I need more space on the Exchange drive for database 21. And the Exchange and the storage admin gets back and says, okay, database 21? I could look into your Excel sheet, which is, I think, 3 weeks old or a month old or older. I don't know what the hell that is. I said, yeah, it's my F drive. I said, okay, the F drive could be one of those drives. I don't know if it's this drive. And this is exactly what our software is doing. We can go out with our PowerShell commands and say, okay, get EMC mailbox server and tell me on which storage system your database one is sitting with just 3 PowerShell commands.
That's awesome.
And then you can say expand EMC storage volume and expand exactly that volume. And I made since we are also wrapping this into tools like Orchestrator, I came up with a smart solution at our last EMC forum. That's our local show that goes around the world and tells people our technologies. I just made a simple web applet within System Center Orchestrator where the Exchange admin goes in, just selects his database and says expand to 10% or 100%. What happens behind the curtains? I figure out based upon the database name, is it a database availability group? How many copies does it have? On which storage system is which copy sitting? And then I go out and expand all the LUNs for database and logs on each server, on each storage system for the various copies we have. And normally you don't know, the storage admin doesn't know how many copies the DB admin has for his database. So I'm doing it with the help of our PowerShell commands. So just giving two names, the database name, which is unique for Exchange, and the amount of expansion in % expands the whole system. It's a job that runs
awesome.
like 10 to 15 minutes, depending on the complexity of the Exchange setup, and then you are done. And I put this into an Orchestrator workflow, but to be more modern, for the next time, I would put it into an SMA workflow, I guess.
Yeah, we had someone from Microsoft talk about that on the show probably a few months ago, I guess now. Still trying to figure out what that means. So let me restate what it is that you're working with here. I think I just figured this out. Are we talking about the EMC Storage Integrator?
Exactly. It's called the EMC Storage Integrator.
Okay. What version are you in right now?
Officially, we are in version 3.1. We are going to announce version 3.5. And I'm working completely in touch together with the engineering team. So I'm always using the latest builds and getting all those new nice features. And for instance, there's a replication system that we have that is responsible for managing snapshots of applications that we have in EMC. It's called AppSync. AppSync is just a nice, I shouldn't use the word nice here because it uses Flash. It's it's close to a nice system. No, it's a very nice system that allows you to create snapshots of your Exchange, SQL, Oracle databases on the underlying array, taking care of all the VSS stuff without the necessity to install providers and all that stuff manually. It does it all automatically. What we do in the new version is, because this one has a REST interface, we connect to AppSync from within ESI. So when I talked about the database creation or the database expansion with PowerShell, because we are integrated in Exchange, in the next step I could say, and now take a snapshot of that database, because the only thing I need to do is I have to apply that database to something that we call service plan. And a service plan, like Bronze, that just tells me it needs to be snapshot every 24 hours. And can you still hear me good?
Yes.
Okay. And the other things that we integrated in is some like our low-level replication stuff like recover points. So whenever you create a LUN on an array, this is local to the array. But you also could say, I want to have that LUN replicated across the country to another array that's sitting on the west coast. So you want to replicate data from the east coast to west coast, or from London to Boston. So normally when you create a LUN, that's not done. But with the integration of our replication stuff with Recover Point, I could very easily from within ESI create a LUN that then gets automatically replicated across the country to the other side, and you have your DR. And you could essentially use PowerShell to do DR fill over to the remote side. And if it's a virtual environment like sitting on top of VMware or sitting on top of Hyper-V, because we support multiple hypervisors within that system, you could just do a failover of the whole hypervisor. Well, you have to script that workflow, but you can script it with our ESI because we know about the hypervisor and we know about all the virtual machines sitting on the hypervisor because that's part of our entities for our integration. So one of our application models that we support within ESI is simply hypervisors.
Okay.
And why do we
that
do
is
this?
Pretty cool.
Because from this interface, we can just go out and provision a new data store to a VMware farm, or we can provision a new file-based disk to a Hyper-V virtual machine. It's just that easy.
Very cool. So I'm going to be sure to call out the EMC storage integrator. Put links to this in the show notes so that people understand what we're talking about. I'm almost sorry that we didn't kind of call that out at the front because I didn't realize the significance of it until we kind of got here to the end of been talking this long. So ESI is okay. So backing up just a little bit, it sounds like it is basically allows you to do integration on a Windows platform. It really kind of brings storage into visibility to all the applications, and it uses PowerShell to do it. Is that right?
Exactly, but people would kill me if I would say it's only Windows.
Okay.
Because
if it's not,
our
I didn't
engineers
know.
never stop. They just added for the new version Linux.
Okay, awesome. Now it looks like this product has actually been around for quite some time. I don't know why I'd never heard of it until now. Looks like version 1.2 was released in 2011.
Well, maybe because it's free. And that's the funny thing. If people give a software as a product for free, the first thing people ask is it supported? And yes, it's fully supported because it's a product. It is part of our Microsoft Cloud OS stack, which is the Microsoft Fast Track. It is part, and it has, other than it has only PowerShell, there's a complete framework behind it that we can utilize. If we integrate into System Center Operations Manager, we use the underlying framework of it's the same. So it's right now popping up in various products at Microsoft.
Very cool. Well, Karsten, what I want to do is kind of wrap it up in here, but I want to give you a chance to tell us where we can learn more about you, about what you're doing. I know that you're on Twitter, maybe you have a blog, so tell us where people can learn more.
So, yeah, there's we have an EMC blogging system where you can have your own blogs. It's called community.emc.com. And then it's /VOTTK, which is my nickname, or just search for the Hyper-V guy. And I'm sure we can present those links later on. So community.emc.com /VOTTK will get to /blog/VOTTK will get to my blog, and I'm blogging there everything around ESI, but also about my lab environment, which is called Networker to Go, or right now Lab Builder. There's another page that I just started recently in May. It's not pretty much updated, but I'm starting to update it once I get more time to focus more on Lab Builder. It's called labbuilder.com without an E at the end, just an R without E. And this is where I put on my PowerShell modules for VMware Workstation that I'm currently doing, because I want to make this available to people in the field. What I'm doing there is I'm writing PowerShell modules to control VMware Workstation. Because this is, for me, the missing piece right now, still in the new version of VMware. They don't have it in. Use PowerShell to create a new virtual machine, to create a snapshot of a VMware virtual machine.
For workstation specifically.
We just lost him.
Darn it.
He may be back. And nope, there's a problem.
I'm back in.
Okay.
Okay. So you were talking about Lab Builder, and this is specifically for VMware Workstation automation.
This is for VMware Workstation automation because Hyper-V has it. But the people at EMC are using VMware Workstation, and I guess there's a good amount of people in the field that are also using VMware Workstation. And I also get asked if I could transport this to Apple and to VMware Fusion, but I guess there's no such thing as PowerShell and Fusion. But they like the idea. I'm wrapping around VMrun because VMrun is a command of VMware Workstation where you can do some stuff with, but at the end of the day you will end up with again screen scraping and trying to ask what it's doing. And there is no thing as a central configuration within WMI or SIM for VMware Workstation. You don't know how many VMs are installed on your system. And this is something I try to figure out and order a little bit with Lab Builder. And I think we can do a whole nother chat on this because it's becoming pretty cool for me because firing up a new VM for me for a new test environment, a complete Exchange system, including Active Directory, takes me just one command and 20 minutes of time to get Exchange installed.
Nice.
Completely customized.
Nice.
So,
well, I found a link to one of your blog posts about Lab Builder, so we'll be sure to put a link in the show notes about that. And before we let you go, Karsten, we've got one more question for you. This is a question that we ask everybody who comes on the podcast. If you could be a superhero or have a superpower, who would it be and why?
if I could be a superhero.
Now is your chance.
I wouldn't be a superhero. I would be a cat. I don't know why, but cats are the most intelligent animals or beings on Earth. It's not because we have 5 of them, but the way they live, it's pretty good. And the power that I wanted to have is that sounds silly, but it's just make freedom to the people. That has nothing to do with IT, because whenever I rethink about my life, I think the next time I'm getting back to Earth, it's not in IT. It must be something different. And so the only wish I have is just peace on Earth, because it makes me sad if I see the football championships, and in the meantime they send me links from Gaza, from Israel, and all that stuff. This is something that makes me completely unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So it's just not about power, it's just a wish how the world should change.
I'm writing down cat, but I will also write down freedom to the people.
Yes, exactly.
Well, Karsten,
So
thank you very much
to do with
for
IT.
spending time with us and sharing the work that you're doing with PowerShell and all the different EMC technologies. It's very good stuff.
Okay, great. Hope to get back to you soon.
All right, thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
All righty. So do you think that those were the audio issues? Where do you think they were? I mean, not the one related to his, when he muted it went away, but the Skype dropping. You think that was because we've done international calls before and not had that problem?
I don't know. You didn't drop, so it wasn't my network.
I'm usually the one that drops.
Right.
So I'm still in, and I try to get off. I'm not in VPN. So what I normally try is when I do those calls, I'm not VPN'd in to the company.
Yeah.
And they don't allow me for Skype. And I'm working with my copper cable rather than with Wi-Fi. This is what I normally do, and I normally don't face issues. However, that's the first time I was using Skype since months, because we normally use WebEx with an EMC.
Sure. And, it's probably the first time you've done it at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, I just installed the desktop version because I think the modern version is
not great.
More complicated to use.
I hate the modern version. And the desktop version crashes when it starts on my computer, so I have to use the modern version.
Oh, things are not getting better if you move them to Microsoft. So try the Apple version, the OS X version.
I know.
No, I think
I know.
I have. The problem is maybe because of my docking unit that it introduces some more audio ports, but normally I should come through the microphone on my headset, and normally it detects it automatically. But that's the magic of automatically, and sounds within Windows could be complicated because they're not even getting it fixed for Lync. So why should it work with Skype?
That's true. Well, the way that the podcast works is that Jonathan will produce an audio version of what we just did and post that to the website. And excuse me, you can either watch Power Scripting or we'll shoot you a link when that goes up in a few days.
Yeah, and on the web page I found somewhere, and this is what I guess you were asking. I found that Thursday was somewhere listed for general, so I think it's that was what Teresa told me. It used to be on Thursday, and for whatever reason, I found a note that it's every Thursday. And I then sent this out to my folks.
It is a little confusing. We used to change to Wednesdays only during the summer, and that was because to accommodate my kids' schedule, because they used to do swim, competitive swimming during the summer. They're not doing it this year, so there was actually no reason to move to Wednesday and confuse everybody, but it was too late. We'd already scheduled things.
How old are they?
Oh, I've got all of them. I have 15, 13, 5, and 3.
Okay, because one of my mates from the United States, Derek Baxter, who's working with me on the Microsoft stuff, his boy is like Dalton Baxter is one of the best swimmers, and he just got picked from one of the universities, and he was national champion and all that stuff. And I know what it means to drive him to the swimming hall each and every morning at 5 o'clock, and
swim meets and swim practice is daily, and that's a lot of dedication for swim.
Yeah, and I'm doing triathlon, and in those seasons I'm doing the long distance stuff with Ironman. You have to make sure that you get all your things done in a certain amount of time. So in those days, swimming starts 6 a.m., but not in front of the pool. It starts 6 a.m. in the water. And this is, you go up at 5 a.m., just grab a coffee, drive to the pool, and then jump in. It's when you're still sleeping, and you know you have to do this, because otherwise you won't survive those 3.8 kilometers.
So you wake up when you hit the water?
Exactly. And even in wintertime, we just put a tent, like a tent or above our pool in our swim club. And then the water is not as warm as in summertime. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah, we do that here in one of the neighborhood pools. Put a tent over it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we will go ahead and let you go, Karsten, but thanks a lot. It was fun for me, and I learned a lot. I hope our listeners will as well.
Okay. Thank you, and talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, cheers. All right, that went fairly well considering the audio problems. Yep.
Good night, everybody.
So, yes, night to everyone, and I do want to reaffirm that we are. We are going to do shirts. I think there was
cool.
definitely enough feedback. I think the question would be whether or not we do like a cafe press doing the fulfillment, where the shirts individually will cost a whole lot more, versus buying a bulk of them ahead of time.
Right.
Because I did that quote and it was like $7.75 each or something like that. If we got, I forget what number I used, but it was like 100
You said
shirts.
100, yeah.
Yeah, so, which is not a crazy number.
No, it's not.
So anyway, that'll be cool. Although there were some requests for a gray shirt. Would you do a gray shirt? I guess I'd never thought about it.
I have some gray shirts.
What's your preference on color?
White.
White, yeah.
Especially with that blue.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Yeah, I don't think gray would really work with that light blue color.
Yep.
Teespring.
Interesting. But you also don't get your shirts. Yeah, we were looking at a couple different options, and I want to say that Don Jones had actually mentioned the same company. So I will definitely look at that. Zero upfront costs and zero risk. We ship directly to buyers. You keep the profit. Sounds exactly like what I want. Yeah, I was actually thinking of doing, like whatever the favorite crowdsourced or crowdfunding campaign is of the day.
Right. Yeah.
But it looks like Teespring is actually doing that specifically for shirts. So that sounds awesome.
Huh.
Yeah, Kickstarter for shirts. I like it.
Wow.
So I will play with that right now. Click here to upload art.
Cool.
Medium.
Well, I've got to jump off. Good night,
Okie dokie.
everybody.
All right. See you guys.